All right, it's now 3 after. We'll go ahead and get started with the webinar. Zoom functionality. Make sure that if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the Q&A box as part of your Zoom panel there. And then depending on the question and the content of what we're discussing, Deepan and I may answer those at that time or save it till the end. So why are we here today? We're here today to talk about how to improve your Postgres performance by combining it with ClickHouse for fast analytics. So who are we? I'm Adam Jennings, Senior Solutions Architect here at DoubleCloud. Been here about a year now. Love helping people get the most out of their data, and I think that today's topic is no exception. Deepan?
Yeah, myself Deepan. I'm working as a Senior Product Manager here at DoubleCloud, responsible for the products and new releases in DoubleCloud.
And DoubleCloud is a platform. We're a platform built for sub-second data analytics on managed open source technologies, and then we'll show some of our stuff toward the end. So the importance of data, right? So we ever see these ever increasing these charts of new data is out there, right? And every year it's doubling, right? And so we're getting all this new data, and so you need to think about being more efficient with your management of that data and how to perform analytics on ever expanding amounts of data. And so
yes, so
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so this actually also a deluge of data presents a lot of other complexities, right? Like because decision making and also like how can we bring in faster analytics and other challenges.
Yeah, exactly. As you see here at the bottom, diverse data requirements and also diverse challenges, right? And just like you said, so I think that there's definitely something to be said with trying to think about early how you're going to architect your solution.
Yeah, but particularly when it comes to analytics, how do you see like Postgres fit in this picture?
Yeah, so I think Postgres is well known. I'm going to go to the next slide here, and Postgres is well known in the it's been around for a while now, and so it has so much reliability and stability because it has been through. I think we're on version 11 or 13, and I mean it just keeps going and. Super feature rich, a wide range of features, whether it's, geospatial data, you can do full text search on it. You can do JSON data, and then, some unique functionality to Postgres, but a lot of that out there, you can see so much in the ecosystem around Postgres. It's definitely scalable. There have been whole companies that have made data warehouses on top of open source Postgres. Speaking of, it is open source. And it's licensed so you can see the code or you can make improvements or commit them back to the maintainers. And then it has that mature ecosystem. So your favorite SQL editor or third-party plugins. There's tons of things that expand what Postgres can do.
Yeah, interesting. But how does it compare with the performance when comparing to like other data warehouses in the market?
Yeah, there's a couple other, systems out there that, have tried to build on top of Postgres. Like I said, I remember one, 5 years ago, Citus, and they would, shard Postgres so you could get more read and write performance out of Postgres. I'm pretty sure they were acquired by Microsoft and then built into some of their products. But, at its core, Postgres is an OLTP database system, so it has the ACID transaction compliance. And so when you think about doing analytics on it, at some point, it's because it's reading rows at a time, it's going to start to have issues. And so I think that's a good time to bring up, why marry that with ClickHouse? So ClickHouse is an open source OLAP database, high performance. It's made for high performance analytics, uses columnar storage so that the OLAP piece and handle billions of rows. And so, that real-time analytics becomes possible. Scalability, there are clusters of ClickHouse and the thousands of nodes out there. And so you can really scale this out or scale this up on larger machines. SQL support, it's got its own, unique flavor of SQL and, a lot of it made for that, OLAP, the analytics use case. But with every release, they're getting closer to ANSI SQL support. And so, there's pretty good coverage of SQL support. There's a large community built around ClickHouse. You see, I'm seeing it, maybe a little bit of confirmation bias where I work, but I'm seeing ClickHouse in the news all the time. People are bringing it up, and there's just more and more improvements happening on the regular. And then it's also open source, so it becomes that cost-effective solution for not only licensing costs, but the way that it performs analytics. And we'll talk a little bit about that more in a few slides.
Yeah, but how does combining Postgres and ClickHouse help in like improving performance? Like ClickHouse being like more an OLAP, and like how do you see that it integrates or blends in together?
Yeah, and I think that showing this slide here will kind of help understand, why use ClickHouse for your analytics and why and not Postgres. So you look here, Postgres, takes much longer to return those queries. And so, you think about those coffee break queries where you have to go write your SQL, hit enter, and then walk away, go get your coffee and come back. I mean, when you think about doing that in Postgres versus ClickHouse, where you can get that real-time results, whether that's, through some type of visualization layer or whether that's through your application, getting snappy results, everybody wants everything in real time these days. So combining them gives you the power to do both.
And like, is there any like particular choice that I need to make? Like, how do I make a choice? Like, okay, now I need to go with Postgres, or like I need to go with a combination of Postgres and ClickHouse. Like, are there any limitations or trade-offs when choosing either one of them?
Yeah, I think that, the trade-offs would be, the OLAP versus the OLTP, and, I'll definitely talk about that. But also knowing which workloads to put on, which system. So if we talk about
Awesome.
why to integrate, you want to separate those workloads, like I just said. Like, so, the more analytics, the ones that I'm doing aggregations, I'm trying to get trend analysis, things like that. Think about doing that on your ClickHouse instance. Well, in the Postgres, you can say, I know that I need these transactions to be ACID compliant. I need to make sure those transactions, the whole transaction happens or none. And I think that they create that idea of the separate workloads. So they're definitely complementary tools. They perform different functions, but they work well together. The whole, analytical processing versus the transactional processing, right? So you see that, which then enables real-time analytics where you don't have to do those coffee break queries. And then you can treat, even the combined of them, you can treat it as your warehouse. And we'll talk about why that is in a few slides.
Awesome. I think this is really interesting, but is there any real world examples or case studies where you can see like the companies have implemented in a hybrid approach where using Postgres and ClickHouse going hand in hand together?
Yeah, I think it works across many different industries, many different use cases. I don't, these are just the three that we've seen with our customers here as examples. Whether that's capturing sensor data and storing it in Postgres and then leveraging ClickHouse for real-time monitoring and historical analysis based on those IoT applications, or on your e-commerce platform. So, you have those transactions being processed in Postgres. You don't want them to, somebody to check out a t-shirt and then realize it's not there because you're using an OLAP database to store those transactions. You store those in Postgres and then do your analytics on ClickHouse. Or the financial systems is a similar story, right? So you want those transactions to be, ACID compliant when you're talking about, money. And so keeping that in something like Postgres, where then you do more of your analytics in ClickHouse. So you can do complex financial analysis using ClickHouse. Which then takes me to this use case that we have from a customer. I think the the use case just went live today. Pagali just is using something similar to this, where they are e-commerce platform, both for the e-commerce side and for the financial fraud protection side. They're using Postgres RDS as their way of storing that, but then they move the data using our transfer tool to our managed ClickHouse, or then they visualize it and they use some of our visualization tool, but they also use Metabase. So they're also fans of open source. Ultimately, so they have multiple ways to visualize the data that is stored in ClickHouse.
Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting. Like ClickHouse is bringing more faster query speeds, but what were the additional benefits like this particular company that you're mentioning about was getting in terms of costs apart from ClickHouse? I mean, I can already see by the charts and I think that you've seen is like ClickHouse is more performant and it's more introducing faster queries, but what is in terms of cost?
Yeah, so not only do you get what you just said about the faster queries, but you can reduce costs because ClickHouse is made for those analytical queries. You can scale down those machines. So instead of scaling up your Postgres instances to handle the analytical queries, move those analytical queries to ClickHouse, and now you're able to use less processing power because of the design of ClickHouse and still get real-time performant result sets. In addition, what we have here at DoubleCloud is our our hybrid storage options. So we can move some of that data to S3, so you can have longer data retention and not pay that, high, warm cache pricing. You pay S3 pricing. And so it gives you the benefits of, reduced cost of actually the ClickHouse instances they're running, but also longer data retention, which then helps, do historical look backs on things like fraud prevention, exactly a use case that Picali is doing.
Interesting. And how is the data integrity? Like, how easy is the process? Like, let's say I have a ClickHouse and have Postgres somewhere in the cloud, but how easy is it to integrate between these two? Like, is it like, do you have to involve some lot of manual interaction between them, or do you need to write a bunch of scripts to transform all those queries? Like, how does it work? How does the integration really work?
Yeah, so I think, it works a couple different ways. You can slice however you want. We have our managed DC transfer service, so we can, transfer data using a lot of Airbyte behind the scenes open source tool. There's Debezium out there that does like the change data capture. Postgres write-ahead logs are definitely, well known for anybody that knows about CDC. So you can use things like open source Debezium. You could write your scripts if that's what you want to do as a company, and write your Python scripts, or use other orchestration tools out there like Airflow or something. So plenty of ways to get the data in, and then once you get the data in the ClickHouse, you start saying moving all your analytical queries from your Postgres to your ClickHouse instance.
Interesting.
So,
and is there any specific mechanism that you can highlight about, like a couple of maybe is there any native connectivity that ClickHouse offers?
Yeah, and then I think that's a good segue to this slide here. Not only can you just replicate data in any of those ways we just talked about, or using other tools out there. There are plenty of ways to replicate data these days, but you can also leverage the power that they both have to combine data. So the first one there is Postgres table engine. So that's a ClickHouse feature that basically, instead of using the default table engine type within ClickHouse, you can actually call the Postgres instance with the key values that you need to actually connect to that Postgres. And then from inside ClickHouse, it'll see it as just a ClickHouse table, but under the hood, you're actually querying that data in Postgres. And the query optimizer is smart enough to know which parts of the query to push down to SQL or to Postgres. So that way Postgres returns the correct result set. You can further do, data, data merging or managing or joins within your ClickHouse environment. So that's the Postgres table engine. Materialized Postgres is a little similar, but it also moves a copy of that data over to your ClickHouse instance. So then it's it's cached, it's hot, it's ready to be accessed. ClickHouse dictionaries, you can use Postgres as a place to store those dictionaries. You basically, in ClickHouse, you can define what is a slowly changing table, or mostly static data that then it caches for performance. So I did a webinar a couple months ago, maybe a month ago now, ClickHouse optimization tips and tricks. And so, as a way to avoid joins, start using things like dictionaries. That way you don't have to worry about joins in ClickHouse. So you can do a similar concept here. You store that data still in Postgres, and then you cache it in ClickHouse. So then you can treat it as another way to do that real-time analytics without moving all of your data. And that Postgres still stays the source of truth for that slowly changing table. Postgres also has a thing that allows you to connect to ClickHouse. So there's a foreign data wrapper within Postgres. And that foreign data wrapper is a library that lets you connect and treat other tables, ClickHouse tables, as Postgres native tables. There's a couple of open source tools out there that allow you to do this. Percona has one that's pretty robust and popular, because it does the same thing as the Postgres table engine does from within ClickHouse. It pushes down the query syntax to ClickHouse in a way that returns the correct results at the Postgres. So you can definitely work, bi-directional with your ClickHouse and your Postgres data using some of these tools. And the last one there is the syntax compatibility. So if you're familiar with MySQL, you'll see a lot of the ClickHouse syntax is based, loosely on MySQL. But also they have, syntax that works with Postgres. So the double colon notation for casting within Postgres is also available in ClickHouse. So that's just one example of ways that trying to make it easy for developers to come from other database systems to work with ClickHouse.
Interesting to see, like, there are a lot of bunch of native options as well that is supported by ClickHouse when it comes to integration. But
For sure.
now that we have seen like Postgres and ClickHouse goes hand in hand very well, now it would be also nice for our audience to hear out if you can provide some like best practices when using ClickHouse in combination with Postgres.
Yeah, for sure. So some of the best practices, I mean, I think these are pretty standard when you're talking about, optimizing your databases. Think about data modeling and your schema design from the beginning. So that same webinar that I referenced earlier, Deepan, about tips and tricks, design your tables that in the way they're going to be accessed. And so I think the same goes when you're adding ClickHouse as a real-time analytics solution that complements your Postgres. Think about, what those queries are going to look like, and what's going to be in your where clause, and think about using that as a way to do your order by. So think about, setting your tables up, and don't be afraid to change them and make some changes, especially if you're working, in a dev environment. Be thoughtful of how you're doing the ETL processes or ELT processes. Are they, they prone to errors? Or do they have redundancies? There are ways that you can make the system more robust so that you have those real-time capabilities all the time, and not just when the ELT pipeline is running. And then performance monitoring and optimization. So, keep an eye on, both your Postgres and your ClickHouse performance. Within DoubleCloud, we have a monitoring solution for managed ClickHouse. So you'll see, a lot of metrics visualized. You can keep an eye on that. And most DBAs do this already. And, so it's nothing, but it's just something to remember and something to keep in mind when you're trying to complement these two tools.
Interesting. Thanks, Adam, for sharing this information.
Yeah, no problem. So, in conclusion, I think that it's a great relationship between the open source Postgres and the open source ClickHouse, and combining the best of both worlds, getting that transactional consistency, the robust ecosystem of Postgres with the fast real-time analytics made for querying large amounts of data in ClickHouse. And so you really start to separate the duties. So you separate those transactions from your analytics and make sure that each tool is doing what it's designed to do. So with that, go ahead and ask any questions if you have in the chat. I'll go ahead and talk about the DoubleCloud architecture, and then we'll jump into questions. Deepan, feel free to jump in on this if you would like. The four main components that we have at DoubleCloud is our transfer service. I already talked about that. Our managed ClickHouse, been talking about that, and touched on our visualization. What I didn't touch on was our managed Kafka. So you can marry that with your ClickHouse or other sources of semi-structured data that you want to move into Kafka, and then ultimately into ClickHouse. The transfer tool works across different types of services, whether it's ads, databases, or even other sources. And then, because we're based on open source components under the hood, we stay true to what's coming out, and we try to stay pretty up to date with each of the releases. So I think we're on ClickHouse 22.4 already, and 22.5 is just getting ready to be released. So try to stay up to date on those.
Yeah, and also to add to that, I think all this component what Adam mentioned about transfer, ClickHouse, visualization, and the beauty of DoubleCloud is like all this components acts like a Lego piece, and every component integrates very seamlessly. So it's like one-stop solution, right from like data ingestion using transfer, and you can use our free visualization services to beautifully build charts, and also with our latest release on like embeddings. And we also have an interesting feature. I think soon it's about the ChatGPT has AI insights. So all this combined together will be an awesome package. I can also build this dashboards embedded within your own internal or external facing applications as well. So yeah.
Yeah, the AI insights just sort of released the other day. So I think it's pretty neat. So I'm going to put it in the chat for everyone. We just had a blog post on that. So basically in the visualization tool, you don't even have to. I see
there's a question, Adam.
Okay.
The question is like a Postgres is running on my analytical queries. Right now it's fine, but at what data volume will I have issues with Postgres running an analytic query? And at what time should I make a decision that should I switch or not?
Yeah, I think, everybody knows, everybody is running this at some point. And I think it's, it depends, and it's going to be that, that answer. But I think really it's, when you start scaling up your Postgres instances, to meet the needs of the analytics that you're doing. Now it's time to start thinking, should I move some of those analytics to a system made for the analytics? I can't remember if I mentioned earlier in the webinar, but Pagali saved, 2x their cost by moving to ClickHouse. So I think cost becomes a factor. Data volumes become a factor. And also, time to query. So if you have enough data volume that your queries are taking, seconds or minutes, now it's time to think of adding in something like ClickHouse.
Interesting. And there's another question actually, like what are the future developments or enhancements that we can expect in terms of combination of Postgres and ClickHouse from DoubleCloud?
Yeah, because we're staying true to the open source version of ClickHouse, and some of our developers have spent some time, a lot of years working with Postgres. We really try to keep, up to date with the newest trends and newest versions. And I think that's why this webinar was at this time, because we see the combination of Postgres and ClickHouse getting even more mature as both tools mature.
See if there's any other questions. Yeah, there's another one. Like, are there any challenges or limitations to be aware of when integrating Postgres and ClickHouse for analytics?
Yeah, I think on this one, the challenges is, remember that you have tools that are complementary to each other and use them for their purpose. Be careful if you add in ClickHouse and only one of your teams starts using it for analytics and everybody else is still trying to use Postgres for their analytics. So if you're going to make that decision to, invest in a platform or a solution like ClickHouse, that you actually, integrate that with across your organization. So instead of still trying to run those analytical queries on Postgres. So some good change management practices are probably a good idea when you're trying to add a new tool.
Yeah, thanks, Adam. I think I don't have any other questions up here.
Okay, thanks, Deepan. I appreciate your help today. Appreciate everybody in the audience today. If you want to get in touch with DoubleCloud, left QR code is to book a meeting or a demo. We can show actually the same solution that I showed on the architecture slide there, Postgres replicated to ClickHouse, and then ClickHouse data being visualized with our visualization tool. On the right-hand side, special offer, thank you for attending the webinar. Additional starting credits to get started playing around with the DoubleCloud platform.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Thanks, Deepan. Thanks, everyone.